The courtroom buzzed with low murmurs as the bailiff called the next case. Judge Linda Barrington, known for her ice-cold demeanor and polished smile, adjusted her black robes and glanced down at the docket. Her eyes flickered with mild disinterest. Next case, the People versus Elijah Mwangi. She looked up. Her professional smile stayed frozen, but her eyes twitched. Elijah stepped forward, chains rattling around his wrists. His skin was a warm bronze tone. His dreadlocks were tied back, eyes were dark and steady. The room's whispers grew louder. The resemblance was undeniable. Judge Barrington cleared her throat, clutching her gavel. "State your name for the record," she said, voice suddenly sharp. Elijah inhaled, never breaking eye contact. His voice carried not anger, but heavy disappointment. "Elijah Mwangi, ma'am. Or should I say mom?" Gasps erupted. The courtroom froze. Judge Barrington's fingers trembled. The gavel slipped and clattered to the floor. She sat paralyzed, color draining from her face. Elijah kept his gaze steady, his quiet words slicing deeper than any shout could. "It's been a long time." The courtroom no longer whispered. It watched. It judged. Judge Barrington's breath caught, her composure slipping in front of dozens of eyes. For a fraction of a second, she wasn't the unshakable authority. She was a woman cornered by her past. She forced herself upright. "Remove that man from my courtroom," she ordered, but her voice cracked. The bailiff hesitated, unsure whether to follow the command or witness history unfold. Elijah didn't flinch. He turned slowly toward the gallery, addressing not just the judge, but everyone present. "I was left at St. Anthony's Home for Boys when I was 7. No letter. No goodbye." A reporter's pen scratched furiously. Cameras clicked. Judge Barrington slammed her fist on the bench. "That's enough!" But Elijah's voice grew stronger. "You told them my mother had died. You told them I had no family." He turned back to her, his face calm but his words merciless. "But I learned to read. I learned to look. And I saw your name in the paper. Linda Mwangi." Before the name change, a gasp again. Judge Barrington's chest rose and fell too fast. Her polished facade melted into raw panic. The prosecutor, Evan Schulman, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Your Honor, should we proceed?" She cleared her throat, ignoring the sweat on her temples. "We'll proceed." The court clerk's voice trembled as she read the charges: burglary, resisting arrest, property damage. Elijah's attorney, Maria Delgado, stood. "Your Honor, permission to speak." A Judge Barrington's hand hovered over her gavel, but didn't move. "Granted." Maria's voice was soft but cutting. "We intend to prove that Mr. Mwangi was set up by officers who falsified reports, and that this case is riddled with bias, both on the streets and here." The judge's face tightened. "Are you implying misconduct in my courtroom?" Maria didn't blink. "I'm implying the truth doesn't care about decorum." Elijah glanced sideways at Maria, gratitude flashing briefly in his eyes. But he knew. The real battle wasn't between lawyers. It was between the truth and the woman who'd spent 2 decades burying it. Judge Barrington gripped the edge of her bench. Her hands were trembling now. Elijah took 1 step forward, his chains dragging. "I didn't come here to ruin you, but I won't let you keep pretending." Silence. Heavy and suffocating. From the back row, an elderly woman whispered, "She has a son." All these years. The judge's voice finally broke, small and hoarse. "Court will recess for 1 hour." She stood and rushed out through the side door, her robe billowing behind her. Elijah didn't move. Neither did the courtroom. The courtroom doors slammed shut behind Judge Barrington, but the murmurs only grew louder. Elijah stood motionless, chains cold against his skin. Eyes fixed on the empty bench where she had once sat towering above him. Maria placed a steady hand on his arm. "You okay?" He nodded once. "I didn't come here to scream. I came here to finish." The courtroom was chaos just beneath its fragile silence. Reporters whispered urgently. Courtroom staff exchanged glances, and the bailiff nervously toyed with his cuffs. In the judge's chambers, Linda Barrington paced in circles. Her hands trembled uncontrollably. How had she not recognized him? The boy she had abandoned, standing in front of her, not as a victim, but as her accuser. She splashed water on her face, staring into the mirror. Her perfectly applied makeup had begun to smear. Her past, the secret she'd buried under law degrees, name changes and sealed records, was unraveling in front of her courtroom. A soft knock. Her clerk's voice, quiet but urging. "Your Honor, the media's asking questions." She clenched her fists. "Prepare a statement. Tell them court will resume as scheduled." Back inside, Elijah sat, staring straight ahead. The chains on his wrists felt heavier than ever, but the weight of years without answers felt heavier still. Maria leaned in. "They're going to try to dismiss this, pressure you, twist the narrative." "I know." His voice was steady. "But I've waited too long to be silent." And the courtroom doors opened again. But instead of Judge Barrington, Chief Judge Alton Reynolds entered, an older man with silver hair, his face carved with authority. "All rise." The courtroom stood in unison. Judge Reynolds took the bench. "Due to unforeseen circumstances, I will be presiding until further notice." Maria raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. Reynolds' eyes found Elijah. "Mr. Wangi, I've been briefed on this case." Elijah straightened. Reynolds continued. "Do you wish to submit any formal motions before we proceed?" Maria stood, voice firm. "Yes, Your Honor. Motion to dismiss all charges based on evidence of entrapment and procedural misconduct." The Reynolds' face didn't flicker. "Submit your documentation." Maria handed over the thick file they'd spent months compiling, audio recordings of officers plotting to target Elijah, discrepancies in police reports, timestamps that didn't align. Reynolds flipped through, his expression unreadable. Finally, he looked up. "This is troubling." The prosecutor, Evan Schoolman, interjected. "Your Honor, we object to the sudden substitution of presiding judges. This is irregular." Reynolds cut him off with a single raised hand. "Your objection is noted and overruled." Elijah exhaled slowly. The walls of power that once seemed impenetrable were beginning to crack. Maria pressed on. "We also submit evidence that Judge Barrington had prior knowledge of Mr. Mwangi's identity and failed to recuse herself, compromising judicial neutrality." Gasps erupted again. Reynolds held up his hand. "Order." He turned to the prosecutor. "Do you have anything to say regarding these allegations?" Evan's face paled. "Wig, we're unaware of any personal connection." Reynolds' eyes hardened. "Then you failed in your duty." The room fell silent. Elijah's heart pounded. For the first time in his life, truth wasn't just a private H, it was a public force. Reynolds spoke again. "This court will reconvene after a short recess, during which I will review these submissions." The gavel struck. Elijah turned to Maria. "We're close," she nodded. "But they'll fight dirtier now." Elijah looked at the door where his mother had fled. "Let them." The courtroom reconvened with a tension so thick it felt suffocating. Cameras had been allowed in by special order. What was once a quiet proceeding was now a national spectacle. Elijah sat straighter, the chains gone. He was no longer a defendant. He was a witness. Judge Reynolds took the bench once again, his expression carved from stone. He cleared his throat. "Before we proceed, I have reviewed the evidence submitted by the defense." A murmur rippled across the room. Reporters leaned forward. Judge Reynolds continued. "This court finds there is sufficient cause to dismiss all charges against Elijah Mwangi, effective immediately." Gasps filled the room. Elijah closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of years fall away. Maria placed a hand on his back, steady and proud. But Reynolds wasn't done. Furthermore, this court will open an immediate judicial review of former presiding Judge Linda Barrington for potential violations of judicial conduct and conflict of interest. The camera swung to the side door as it opened. Linda Barrington entered. Pale, her composure fractured, yet trying desperately to maintain authority. She walked slowly to the front, facing Judge Reynolds. Her voice was hoarse. "Your Honor, I request permission to speak." Reynolds nodded once. Linda turned, facing Elijah, but also the entire courtroom, and millions watching from afar. Her lips trembled. I knew the moment he spoke who he was. Elijah's jaw clenched. Linda's voice cracked. I was a scared teenager. I made a decision. I thought it was mercy to give him up. I thought it was the right thing. I buried that part of my life. Her breath caught. I never imagined I'd sit in judgment over my own son. The room was dead silent. Elijah's voice cut through it like a blade. And yet you did. She met his eyes. The judge mask fell away. Only a broken woman remained. I failed you. Elijah stood slowly. You failed the law. You failed justice. But most of all, you failed yourself. Tears slipped down her cheeks. Judge Reynolds spoke, voice low but firm. Your admission has been recorded. A full investigation will follow. Linda nodded. Her career, her carefully constructed identity, was crumbling in real time. Elijah took one step closer. The entire room leaned in. I spent my life wondering who I was, he said. The system you served tried to break me. But today, I stand here free. Not because of mercy, but because truth refused to stay buried. Linda's face crumpled. She turned away, her shoulders shaking. Judge Reynolds struck the gavel once more. This court is adjourned. Outside, the steps of the courthouse were flooded with press. Microphones thrust forward, questions flying like arrows. Elijah stepped out into the sunlight, Maria at his side. The noise swelled, but he raised a hand. Silence fell. I came here accused, he began. I leave here free. But this isn't just my story. It's the story of every person the system has tried to silence. Today, the truth spoke louder. The crowd erupted in applause. Maria whispered, You did it. Elijah exhaled. We did. Elijah walked down the courthouse steps slowly, each step lighter than the last. Maria stayed beside him, her presence a quiet reassurance. Reporters continued shouting questions, but he ignored them. At the bottom of the stairs, Elijah stopped and turned. Linda was being led out by two officials, not as a criminal but as someone stripped of power. Their eyes met one last time. She looked small, exposed, and fragile. He nodded once. Not in forgiveness, but in acknowledgement of closure. The cameras flashed as Linda was driven away, her career over, her secrets public. Elijah turned toward the waiting crowd. A young black law student stepped forward, eyes wide with admiration. Sir, you changed everything today. Elijah placed a hand on the student's shoulder. A change comes when truth is louder than fear. Maria took Elijah's hand. You ready to go home? He smiled. For the first time, he felt the word home meant more than a place. It was peace, finally earned. They walked together toward a future that no longer felt like borrowed time. Behind them, headlines flashed across phones, judge exposed for secret family ties and judicial misconduct. Linda's name would forever be associated with betrayal. Elijah's would be associated with resilience. As the courthouse doors closed, the weight of history shifted. The system had been forced to look at itself and flinch. And for the first time in his life, Elijah Mwangi walked away without looking over his shoulder.